so why don't we go ahead and get started and people will join us. So first of all, hi everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for this virtual live panel. I know everybody is really, really excited to hear from our panelists. Just before we dive in, we've received a lot of communication here at headquarters where people are asking about NSA, how we're doing, what are our prospects. So first of all, thank you so much for your concern, especially because we know this isn't easy for you or your businesses right now. So I just want to give a couple of quick updates. NSA is just like all other associations and organizations that are in the meeting industry right now, and we're taking everything week by week. Everybody is making informed predictions or guesses, and that's where we're at. I know a lot of people have questions about influence, and as of right now, we're moving forward with influence. We're fortunate that we're not in the position that a lot of other associations and organizations are in, where our big convention is in late spring or early summer, so we have some time. We're taking it really seriously. We're evaluating our options weekly, even daily, including adding a virtual option. We're also talking to our hotel contacts, our attorneys, our suppliers, and making sure that we're doing all of the preparatory things just in case anything happens. But as of now, we're moving forward with influence, and if anything changes, we will let all of our members know. The other thing is, you know, just like every other organization and like what you're doing in your businesses, we're looking at the state of our organization and our industry, and we're analyzing our financial options and our business model in consultation with our finance committee and our board of directors, obviously. So we're looking at scenarios now so that we can be prepared to weather this crisis. And one thing that I will say is that our members are the people that are going to be hired to help companies rebuild when recovery mode sets in. So we will weather this together. That being said, we really want the focus of this event to be on how we can help you and your business. So without further delay, I'm excited to get into this discussion. The panel represents advice and insights from multiple perspectives. We have individuals who are high frequency keynoters, authors, experts, those that have a blended speaker consultant or speaker coaching model. Some panelists have employees, some don't, and they're all located in different geographic areas. As you have questions, please use the question tab or the Q&A tab at the bottom of Zoom, and we'll get to as many as we can. Also, if you have suggestions about the topics that we're discussing, please send them through the Q&A tab, and I'll try to post as many of those in real time as we can to all attendees. So please officially welcome our panel, Randy Gage, Anna Liotta, Barry Banther, and Baer.
Thanks,
hey, everybody.
So let's get this started with you, Barry. So you are a financially savvy business person. Most speakers and those with a blended speaking model have seen almost all of their income in the short term just vanish. What financial advice do you have for them to get through this? Specifically, what things should they be doing right now, over the next month, and then further, depending upon what is happening?
Thank you, Mary Lou, for this idea and for putting this together, and to our fellow panelists and to all of you who are tuning into this. This is a difficult time, and I'm glad there are no other people I'd rather be going through this with than the people on this screen and the people that are on this Zoom tonight. I'm going to make the assumption that I'm answering a question about if you've got to create cash for the next 6 months, to create a cash flow for the next 6 months, what can you do financially to do that? The majority of our clients are family-owned businesses, and over 30 years, at some point in the life of every family-owned business, and oftentimes the family members, this is a legitimate question. I'm not pretending to be a financial expert or a financial advisor. Check with them before you take upon any of this advice. But there are 10 things in particular that I wanted to say. Here's the first one. Get a piece of paper, preferably a legal pad. Number one, list at the top all fixed expenses. That's your mortgage, that's your utilities, that's your car payment, every fixed expense that's tied to a particular day in the month that has to be paid. On the bottom half of that piece of paper, that legal pad, list every variable expense. Now, if you've not done this, if you can't put your hands on that tonight, I will guarantee you, you've got fixed and variable expenses that you're not aware of, that you've forgotten about. And in the climate we're in right now, when you're trying to create cash flow for 6 months, every single penny matters. And so list all your fixed expenses and then list all your variable expenses. Then that's number 2, are the variable expenses. Then here's number 3. Go back to the fixed expense list and go on the website for every fixed expense, the utility, the mortgage, the car payment, etc., and search to see if they've got a forbearance or a postponed payment program. And don't just check one time, continue to check. If you've been canceling or exchanging airline tickets this week, you know that that's changing every day. The big stimulus package that was passed or the small stimulus package that was passed in the House today, the bigger $1 trillion one is coming. They're going to require banks and other financial institutions that get any aid to have a forbearance program. So number 1, list all your fixed expenses. Take your time, make sure you've got them all, from the dog walker to the garbage to whatever you're doing. Number 2, list all your variable expenses. Then number 3, go to their website, see what kind of forbearance program they have. Remember, you're trying to create cash flow by deferring expenses for the next 6 months, and you want to check those daily. And then number 4, you want to minimize your variable expenses. Undoubtedly, a significant percentage of your variable expenses, you can minimize those, you can eliminate those, set those aside for the current 6 months that we're working on. These first 4 steps will immediately generate additional revenue inside the cash flow that you need. Then here's number 5. Check the balance that's available with the corresponding interest on all of your credit cards, on all of them, because the credit card can, if necessary, become a tool for essentials. It's important to keep the mindset that you're getting through 6 months. Yes, there are things that are going to have to be paid back. There'll be changes that have to be made. But right now, those that play golf know when you're in trouble, when you've hit the ball in the rough, you've got one goal: get the ball back in the fairway. And all we're trying to do right now, we're simply trying to get you in a position where you've got the cash flow to sustain yourself so you can sustain your business. So number 5, check the balance that's available on all those cards, check the corresponding interest, see if there's a forbearance program there that, even though you may put some essentials on those credit cards over the next 6 months, that you can also postpone those payments. Number 7, check all of your life insurance policies, because many of your life insurance policies have a cash value that you've forgotten about. There's a loan opportunity there, and it's usually a very good interest rate. Now keep in mind, if you need to create $60,000 in disposable cash to get through 6 months, we're going to every source we can, minimizing fixed expenses, minimizing variable expenses, coming up with available credit on the credit card, now looking at your insurance policies, there's cash there that you can borrow. I would recommend, and again, trust your financial advisor before you do me, if you can borrow money against your life insurance, borrow it, get it in the bank as cash in case you need that cash in the next 6 months. At the end of 6 months, you can repay it, and it's no harm, no foul. But it's important that you be looking at those insurance policies, because that's often a place where people don't realize they have cash that's available to them. Number 8, this is very important. You want to monitor every day all the federal, state, and local programs. In that bill today in the House and the Senate, there's a provision for small businesses that almost all of us qualify for, to be able to get payroll support for up to 6 weeks. It's a maximum, I think, of about $1,500 a person. So if there are 3 of you on your payroll, you and 2 other people, then you could get up to $4,500 a week for 6 weeks from that federal program. And again, if you don't have to use it, if you've got other income that's coming in, set it aside. It's there in case you need it, or otherwise you can have it. So check all the federal programs. That's the first part of number 8. Secondly, check your state programs. Here in the state of Florida where we live, our governor's announced that all small businesses, to be a small business, you have to have at least 2 employees and no more than 500. You're eligible for an immediate $50,000, 0% interest for 12 months, and it's being done through the Small Business Administration, backed by the state of Florida, no questions asked. Check your state and go back to your state website every day to see what they have. And then third, look for local opportunities as well, because there can be some local governments, some local enterprise zones that might be doing the same thing. Now, while you're checking the federal, the state, and the local, here's another one that's important to check. You want to check with your local bank, whomever you've been doing business with. Maybe you don't have a credit line. Doesn't mean you couldn't get one. Maybe you've got equity in your home you could begin to open a credit line with. Keep in mind, we're trying to keep the ball in the fairway for 6 months. I'm not suggesting you take that money and buy a car. You don't need a car, but you want that money available so that you can sustain your business. So your business can continue without any business income, yet you've got this other income that will allow you to meet all of your household and personal expenses. So number one, all fixed and variable expenses. That's number two. Number three, on every fixed expense and variable expense, see if there's a forbearance of payments. Number four, minimize the variable expenses. Number six, check the balance that's available on those interest cards. See what they have as an opportunity for you with the interest. Number six, check those cards for their forbearance provisions. Number seven, check all your life insurance policies. See what cash is available for a loan opportunity. Then number eight, monitor the federal, state, and local things that are being done right now to keep small businesses afloat. Number nine, you have to remind yourself every day you're managing cash for 180 days. Now, anyone, and I often say that to succeed in business, here's an experience you need. You need to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning on the last day of the month thinking to yourself, how on earth am I going to make payroll? If you've lived through that kind of experience, you're probably pretty good at these times. So you want to manage the cash, but you're managing it for 180 days. Here's number 10. And this is one from my mentor, Randy Gage. Money is mental. Money is mental. That's all it is. It's mental. So you have to remind yourself every day, you've got the ability to produce income. And I believe we might hear from one of our panelists later as we talk about the future. We may be entering the greatest time in history to be a speaker, a coach, a consultant, a trusted advisor. So money's mental. Remind yourself every day you've got the ability to produce income. You want to begin to move toward that prosperity mindset. And then the second thing you can do every day is just say to yourself, I can contain my expenses, I can manage the available cash flow, and I can get ready for unprecedented growth. So Mary Lou, these are the first 10 things that I would suggest anyone do to try to create cash flow to sustain your business for 6 months.
So Barry, we've had a couple of questions come in related to sole proprietors or people that use virtual assistants or 1099s. So they wouldn't qualify necessarily for some of the government assistance, but how much of the other tips are relevant for them?
Well, all the tips are relevant, and I would attempt to qualify. I would look at the application, not suggesting that anyone lie or do anything like that, but you might be able to count the virtual assistant. You might be able to count an independent contractor or 1099. So don't assume that you don't. And in the time we're in, there's so much that's flexible. Here's something I want you to think about as you work through financially. Over the next 6 months, we all need a high tolerance for ambiguity. A high tolerance for ambiguity. Get on the phone with that bank. Get on the phone with that local government. Get in touch with your congressman. Find out if you couldn't qualify. So don't immediately assume because you're a sole proprietor that you don't qualify. And I think in the next bill that's coming up in the Senate, it is going to cover anything that's a legitimate business locally. So don't assume that you don't qualify. Attempt to qualify. All the other things, the life insurance and the credit cards and your fixed and variable expenses, those apply to all of us.
Excellent tips. Jay, what would you add?
I loved, my dad was a financial advisor for more than 30 years. And so some of this is a familiar refrain for me since I was a young boy. You will have life insurance, but the notion of borrowing against your life insurance, your term policy is particularly fantastic, I find, and one that is so often overlooked. One of the things that we're trying to do in our organization is to not totally play defense. I think Randy will touch on this as well, but to play offense as well. In fact, we have a company that transcends our speaking business. We've actually doubled our sales team in the last week. Our idea is to not only be smart about finances, as Barry so adroitly pointed out, but also sell our way out of this, not just try and cut our way out of it, because it's awful hard to do that, especially if you go 6 months.
Excellent. Anna, what would you add?
One of the things I would add is there's a lot of existing contracts that would be open to renegotiation right now when it comes to any of those, what we consider to be fixed or variable. So calling even your internet provider right now and saying, am I getting the best rate for my internet? Calling many of the organizations right now and asking, is there something that you could do right now? Because what they don't want you to do is to turn it off. So if you look down that list and start to give calls, you might find that what you thought was the best rate is not actually the best rate right now.
Well, and to that point, you might be able to pause or suspend an account versus like canceling as well too.
Absolutely.
And-
They're going to want you to deposit maybe for $5 on a $100 monthly thing because they want you to stay in their system. So you could go for, save $95 per month for the next 3 months or 6 months because they just don't want you to coming out of their system and then have to resell you.
And Mary Lou, to piggyback on what Jay said, I followed up on a client coaching prospect with a public company, and the executive vice president said, look, I want to do this, but right now they've just frozen everything. So I need to wait 2 months. And I said, no, you need me now. We'll tag the money on at the end of the 2 months, sign the contract, and I'll defer your payment. You don't start paying for the 3 months later. And he said, you'll do that? I said, just as soon as you agree to it, we're done. So to Jay's point, while you're doing on all these things to manage your expenses, be very proactive on creating more variable and fixed income, especially by being able to partner with people where you can delay their payment for a couple of months to go ahead and get started.
Excellent point. Randy, what would you add?
Two things jump to mind. One is, so Barry has this great start, which is, okay, first you look at what's your income, then you look at what is the number of your lifestyle, your business expenses, and then what's left over, and try to make that number as big as possible. I would also tweak that to say, try to reduce that top number and redeploy that money into your business, investing for the future. So if you say, okay, you know what, I'm afraid to even go to my gym right now, or my gym is closed. Do I have $1,000 a year gym membership that I can cancel, and I could take that $1,000 and invest it in starting a podcast? Do I have a motorcycle that I, haven't ridden for 3 months? Can I sell that thing and get $2,000 and put it into a blog? What can you do that would reduce your lifestyle expense or your business expense that you could redeploy into business development? And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the session. And the second thing, I'm going to bring up a really dirty word that nobody wants to hear. And that word is bankruptcy. If I look at our membership and say, okay, forget the people who have a day job and they speak occasionally, but the people in our membership who have not a day job and they're just doing the speaking business, what percent of them would normally survive what I believe is a black swan event that we're about to go into, that I believe in 2070, people will be talking about what happened in 2020. That's how big I think this will be. And I'll be very happy if 2 weeks from now, everybody's laughing at me on Facebook and telling me what an idiot I was and how I overreacted. I will be delighted to be wrong. But if I'm not, if I look at our speaking member, I'd say, 40% of these people won't survive this unless they do something drastic. And Barry's list was brilliant, all of those things. If it's not enough, what I want you to consider, and again, I like Barry, I'm not a financial planner. You talk to a financial planner, talk to an advisor. But if need be, declare bankruptcy. And I don't mean declare bankruptcy, get out of the business, and then go get a job working the midnight shift at Costco. I mean, declare bankruptcy on a Monday and be doing your next client proposal on Tuesday. Because, I have a friend, he got cancer. He had $150,000 in medical bills. And I told him, declare bankruptcy. That's what bankruptcy is for, a situation like that. Well, my client, I was like, nobody is going to stop doing business with you because you got $150,000 in cancer bills and you had to declare bankruptcy. You still give great value, right? It's going to be the same for this. The speaker mantra, it's all just new material. So if you have to declare bankruptcy in 2020, that's your signature story in 2021, right? So a last resort, do everything Barry says. That should only be a last resort. But if it is, don't do it to give up the ghost. You do it on Monday, and then on Tuesday, you're back making proposals and you're in the game, even if you do have to work at Costco on the midnight shift to pay the bills while you're building the business. What I'm saying is that 40% of you who's going to get kicked in the teeth, is already being kicked in the teeth. Don't give up the ghost on your dream. This will pass. And when it passes, We are going to be the ultimate people in demand. We're coaches, we're consultants, we inspire people, we help solve problems. We're the people the world needs right now. And what we're trying to do tonight is just help you get through the next 6 months so you live to fight another day. And that's the main thing.
So, and Randy, I would emphasize what you said is our members are the people that companies need as they start to rebuild and as we enter recovery mode, but our members are who people need to see today. There is a lot of fear, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Our people for a living deal with that. Our people for a living inspire people. So we need speakers now more than ever. So with that, I'm going to go to the next question, and this one's for you, Anna. I'm sure you have had a ton of conversations with your clients, and I'm sure some of them were around they want to cancel or postpone. What are some of the things that you've said or offered to switch that narrative and build business now?
Thank you. One of the first things as I did the interviews with meeting planners and bureau owners and clients of my own that I started with is what I heard from Lynn Edwards: tell me more. So first, tell me more about what's happening for you so that I could get a full scope before we went into the what does it look like. The next thing I looked at is how can I create value? No matter what the choice is, whether it's cancel, postpone, reschedule, how can I create value for you no matter what we're going to do next? So many of them, if they're looking at those options right now, are also looking for how do they start to deliver value, even if it's postpone. How do I start to deliver value for the folks that were looking to come to this event, and we're going to have some space in their calendar for this event, for what they were going to learn, and how can I do that? Some of the bureau partners that I've spoke with talked about already starting to create a video beforehand that you're going to send during this time, and also looking at how could we make the option of a virtual or live webinar during the time that the event was going to happen. So immediately, can I make a video that we can send out to your members to help them address the anxiety, the uncertainty, that I can bring the topic that I'm speaking on, and I can apply the topic to the times, not just what I was going to share on the future date, but how can I take my expertise and look at how generations right now is relevant to the times? How does each generation deal with crisis? How does each generation deal with the stress and resilience of this time? So how could I immediately start delivering value, no matter if it was even going to be canceled? Because what I'm looking at right now in every single client conversation is the partnership and the reciprocity that it builds when helping now is helping them get to what's next. So today I was talking with one of our colleagues, Bill Staten, and he said he'd heard this great phrase: helping is the new selling. So right now, I'm not asking them to be paying me for that early help. I'm saying, tell me more about what you're doing right now. How can we make sure your members, your attendees are getting value? And then, yes, we can start looking at the next stage of what does it look like? Does it look like deferred? Does it look like, I hold a deposit for the next year? But we started from get value to your people right now, and then we can be having the conversation about how payment looks.
So Anna, this is a semi-related question that we received from Michelle. She has 2 engagements in May. When would you advise that she contact those customers to offer a teleconference, virtual, or some other option, or does she wait for them to contact her?
This is a great question. Again, when I was speaking to Lynn, I asked her something in this vein, and she said, absolutely, you can reach out to me if we already have something. So Michelle, like you said, you've got 2 in May. So if we already have something on the books, please email me and share with me that you would be happy to continue to provide, that you're ready to get on the plane or you're ready to get there, whether it's drive, plane, or whatever. But also, what other options do you have available to him or her? And so by email, I would reach out now and just say, I'm incredibly flexible. I know these, you're thinking through a lot of different things right now, but reach out by email and just let them know that you're available, whatever they need.
Perfect. Randy, do you want to add anything to what Anna discussed?
The flexibility thing, that's going to be everything. I mean, I have a client that was in Chile that I was supposed to be doing a program last November, and they had a civil war, basically, which you don't hear about on the news here, but it pretty much is basically a civil war. So we moved that to April. Well, of course, now it's not going to happen in April. But I'm not busting their chops and saying, well, I booked that date and, you know, I couldn't rebook it. I'm like, hey, there was no way they could foresee this. I need to work with them at just as best as possible. And so I don't even know when I'll do it. It'll be whenever, but flexibility, we all need to be doing that right now.
And Barry, one of the questions that I was scanning in the chat, and I saw a couple in the Q&A too, is about reducing your fee. And is now the time to reduce your fee? How do you handle that? Barry, first, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the reason good race drivers in NASCAR don't have a brake in the car. You don't reduce your fees under any circumstances. And I don't mean to be flippant about it, but no, that's not the answer. For example, to my top 20 clients, I sent an email earlier in the week. I'm here. I know you need help. Let me know. I've had 2 of them call. One called today, said, I've got to get these emails out to the employees. Help me. So if you're working with a client and it's a standoff, it's a one-on-off seminar or keynote, I wouldn't even begin to talk about reducing the fee. I'd postpone it. I would invoice it over 3 months. I might do all sorts of creative things, but reducing it is not what they need right now. They need the help and they need to know that you're there. So my encouragement is don't discount, spread it out if you need to, find a way to do that. But everybody, before noon tomorrow, send an email or a text to your 20 top clients and say, I'm here. I know you need help. Let me know. And for me, so far, 2 of them have responded. So that would be my immediate response. I wouldn't wait to contact anybody closer to a date. Reach out now, be proactive, make it simple, make it easy for people to respond to you.
Yeah, and what we're doing on that front, Barry, is contacting all those clients and telling them our main priority is making sure that you're okay and that you get through this.
Right.
So the offer that we're making to all of our clients, both on the speaking side and the consulting side, is whatever you need, just let us know. We're not even going to charge you for it. We'll just take care of it. And those kind of offers go an awful long way. Because as I mentioned in the chat, the one thing every single one of us has almost unlimited supplies of right now is time. And your unit cost on your time is literally 0. So if you need to work 18 hours a day to make sure your clients get through this, it'll be amazing how much those clients reward you afterwards. So the one thing you need to protect is your fee. The one thing you don't need to protect right now is your time.
That's a really, really great clarification. And I can tell you from somebody who has hired speakers, when we've had to cancel an event in the past or work with it, the speakers that worked with me on it are the speakers that I brought back multiple times. And you're right, this is the time to build that relationship and build that relational capital. So you can bank that. So as we recover, you know, you're their go-to person, you're their hero. So I really love that point of view. So Jay, this next question is for you. Is we pretty much know right now our main option is virtual. So my question to you is, which do you think is going to be harder for our members? A, knowing how to describe and pitch a virtual event, or B, the mechanics on actually holding a virtual event? And then just I'm going to ask you to talk to both.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, it depends on the member. There are certainly many members out there who are very comfortable doing this kind of format, whether it's a YouTube video or a Zoom call or any other sort of webinar platform. That being said, let's address the members who aren't as comfortable in this medium and haven't been doing it for years and years and years like some have. Mm-hmm. One begets the other. One thing I've discovered in my career is that the same way that dogs can smell fear, clients can smell uncertainty. So you may want to go out and pitch a series of webinars and virtual events and digital puppet shows or whatever you're going to concoct. But if you don't actually have some degree of comfort with that medium yourself, that is going to be very apparent to the client, either in how you present it in writing or how you describe it on the phone or on video yourself. So my recommendation would be to get comfortable with the technology and its cadences and rhythms, even if you don't have a client. If I wasn't super experienced at webinars, what I'd be doing right now is doing webinars from my dog and doing webinars for my wife. And I would get real comfortable with these kind of things to make sure that we sort of feel like we can actually deliver for our clients. Because look, we all got into this business. Yeah, it pays well and people applaud and all that, but we all got into this business because we want to serve. And we want to do a great job for our clients and our clients' clients. And you've got to make sure that you can actually bring the goods, whether that's on stage or on the computer. So I think that kind of practice and getting familiar with the equipment and how it works is a real precursor to being able to sell this effectively. I do have a couple of resources along those lines that I'll put in the chat. First is I put together an article a couple of weeks ago about virtual event success factors and how you can't just take your keynote or your workshop and say, now we're going to do it on Zoom or now we're going to do it as a webinar. It's not the same. It's not as entertaining. It's a different psychology. You have to do it shorter. You have to have the visuals different. You can't just turn your keynote, overnight into an effective webinar. So I've got some tips in the chat on that. Also, people ask me all the time, and especially lately, well, what equipment do you need? And we're trying to save money. Barry just said we got to save money and we got to pull money out of all these different places, and you absolutely should. But now Jay's saying we got to have technology in order to do webinars. You do, but it's not terribly expensive, and you may be able to get a loan for it. I put together an Amazon wish list that is public, so everybody can get to it, which has my recommendations for inexpensive cameras, microphones, lights, etc. One tip that people neglect: if you don't have, for whatever reason, a second monitor in your home office setup, you're going to want one, because when you're doing webinars live for clients, a lot of times if you use speaker notes or any other kind of visual support, it hides that when you're live, and it can be very disconcerting, especially if you're unfamiliar. So if you don't have a second monitor, you should get one. They're so inexpensive now; they're like $60. So it's really worth picking one of those up. So that's the second link I put in there, was the equipment list. Third thing, and I am so excited to bring this to all of you. One of my partners for a long time is TechSmith. TechSmith is a company that makes the Camtasia software as well as the Snagit software. Camtasia is used for pre-recorded webinars, which I use it all the time for clients, and Snagit is used for screen grabs and things like that. Those two pieces of software together are $299. I was talking to them about their webinars that I'm working on upcoming, and they said, we really want to make sure that speakers can do this kind of work, those who are used to speaking only face-to-face. And so what they've allowed me to do, I'll put a link in the chat, is if you fill out this very short survey, it's 5 or 6 questions, they will, within the next 48 hours, send every NSA member a free copy of both software packages for your use.
That's amazing. On this topic, Jay, Craig Harrison asked, related to fee reduction, if you're switching from live to virtual,
yes,
others keeping the fees the same. I will say that I've noticed conferences that are switching to virtual are keeping their fees the same. What are you noticing?
Yeah, in most cases, I think especially now for events that were supposed to happen March, April, they're keeping their fees the same, because the drama to change the whole cost structure for them is a real scary proposition. I will say this: I charge for webinars about 2/3 of what I charge for keynotes, but that's been true for 12 years since I started doing paid webinars. So when I say don't change your fee, I mean don't change your fee for that thing. I think it is very difficult for all speakers. Some people may have a difference of opinion on this, but it has always been difficult for me to charge the same fee for a webinar as I would for a live performance, because I don't have to leave. It's not going to take me a day to get there and a day to get back, and they understand that. Also, when people are just thinking about webinars in general, there's perhaps incorrectly, but I think there's a somewhat reduced perceived value as well. So I certainly wouldn't drop my fee for a keynote, and I wouldn't drop my fee for a webinar, but the webinar fee and the keynote fee are not the same, and they never have been. One thing I'll add on fees, Mary Lou, is when people push back on fees right now, I think the smart thing to do is to not drop your fee, but to what we do is atomize the service. And Barry touched on this a little bit. So for example, if somebody says, we want you to do a webinar, and I quote a fee, and they say, we don't really want to spend that on the webinar right now. It's a new program for us, experimental. We say, okay, well, what we'd like to do instead, and we actually invented this 4 years ago. We have the domain name and everything. We're going to do a Web9. It's a 9-minute webinar. because most people don't want to sit on a 45-minute or 60-minute webinar. It gets kind of boring, but a 9-minute webinar they'll sit on. So what I'm going to do for you, client, instead of a regular webinar is I'm going to do 4 9-minute webinars. And that makes sense for you because you'll get more people to show up. It makes sense for me because I can do them 9 minutes at a time. So the fee remains the same, but instead of them getting 1 content asset and 1 bite at the apple, they now get 4 content assets and 4 bites at the apple. And when you just sort of change the way you package your thought leadership, that can really alter the way the client thinks about it. Because just saying webinar is 45 or 60 minutes equals this amount, that's going to get to be a tough row to hoe here pretty quickly because there's going to be a flood of webinars in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great point. Randy, I think, so I have a question for you that is really related to this and really important. And I think this is an example where we can learn from you and from your example. So you recently had an event that I think was supposed to start live tomorrow in San Diego, and you had to postpone that event. But I've heard from several people that the way you've handled that and managed that has left your customers feeling really good. And I think there were like some virtual components to that. Can you talk about how you postponed it and what you did and kind of the thought process behind that and how other members could use some of those ideas?
Yeah, so it was starting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. in San Diego. It's a 1-time-a-year event I do called Tribal. It's just for people who build tribes. So I have politicians and political leaders and authors and speakers and just thought leaders. And so it's very intense boot camp, usually 15 hours a day. So I started getting 5 weeks ago, hey, I'm coming from Asia and I'd have to go through 4 Asian airports to get there. And I have an elderly father and I'm the only caregiver. And I was like, you know what? Don't come, get on the, and it has a virtual option anyway, right? And then another one. And then as we got a little further, well, the airline just called me. They canceled my flights. They're reducing the flights. Now I'm going to get in at 2 a.m. the night before. I don't know if I could come. And, I'm nervous. And so I had been following this because Silicon Valley really was early on this. The tech people 6-7 weeks ago were saying, this one could be different. This one looks, the numbers aren't good on this. The rumors coming out of China are not good on this. And so I was really proactive, and I really follow, if you look in my Twitter feed, there's a who's who of the world's greatest epidemiologists, whatever they're called, virologists, whatever they're called, and I was just tracking. And I made the decision maybe 3-4 weeks ago, guys, I'm postponing it. Half the people were so relieved. The other half were very pissed off. They thought I was overreacting and I was buying into media hysteria and I was going to be so sorry I did that. And now you can see if it was tomorrow, I would be conducting it at table 5 in the Waffle House because it would be me and 3 other people. So I just looked at, okay, my first thing is, okay. So I have about a $200,000 kick in the teeth by moving this that I took last week, right? So, and just so I'll talk later about a $700,000 to $900,000 consulting contract that I lost last week because of this. So I literally lost $1 million last week in sales because of coronavirus. So I'm in the situation everybody in this association is in, like, okay. And in my case, I didn't have that money yet, but I had already promised it to the crack dealer and my bookie and the cocaine dealer. And, so I was like, okay, I'm going to have to really think. And then I just looked at, okay, do I reschedule this? But half the people are pissed off. They don't want me to reschedule this. How do I turn lemons into lemonade with this thing? Mm-hmm. And so here's what I created so it's a high level thing. It's 10 grand a person, right? And it comes with a 1-year follow-up program where they get a webinar every month. They get a brief every month. They have electronic hot seats, which would be like one-on-one consultations. They get 4 of those. So that was built in the package. So now I moved it to August, and we can talk later about why I chose August, right? And I sent out the thing and said, here's the deal. I'm moving it to August. I know half of you want it, but I've made this decision. I have to think of the health of my people, my staff, the AV crew I'm flying in. Has to be financially viable, because I do have a whole AV crew that, works at this thing, because we stream it live and we record it. And it just wasn't going to be viable. And I didn't feel it was going to be safe. So I said, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm moving it to August. And then on the original days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'm going to pick 4 of the foundational segments. And I'm going to live stream them from home in my Chewbacca pajamas and give you that info right now, because I had some people who were saying, I can't wait till August. This is killing me. I need to know this stuff right now. So for instance, tomorrow I'm going to do a 3-hour streaming session on how to move from a commodity to an expert to a thought leader, because thought leaders are the people that don't get cut in situations like this, right? They're people like Baer that they say, no, we need you now. We don't want you later. We need you right now. That's what thought leaders do, right? So I'm going to do 3 hours on that. The Friday, I'm going to do a couple hours on IP, creating IP. Why? Because I think that's what delineates the difference between a commodity versus an expert, and then really expert to thought leader is having, by that I mean intellectual property, for anyone who doesn't know. Then I'm going to do a streaming thing on updating your website, how to do, and more on the digital stuff. Then I said, okay, what I'm also going to do, I'm going to take this 1-year coaching program that you're going to get after it, and I'm adding 5 months to it right now for before it. So you're going to have 5 months of webinars, 5 months of the brief, 5 months, an extra hot, I put in an extra hot seat that they could use right now to help deal with their situation. I gave them a free ticket to my speaker school for next year, and, a couple other little perks like that. So basically, Greg Williams is here, Brian Walters here. They're both, Anna is actually registered for it too. They, what I heard from those people is, hey, we love this. You know what? You really did make something good out of this, because we're going to get some real tangible value right now that we can apply in this difficult time. And you're going to be schooling. Basically, I told my people, like I did a special webinar for them this morning, kind of what we're doing here for you guys at NSA, I did for my coaching people. And I just told them, I'm going to adopt you guys for the next 5 months until this event to make sure we get you to that event alive, still breathing. And then I'm going to work extra hard. I'm going to take all these sessions that I've done now that I'm giving you in the streaming, and I'm going to replace them with even more content at the live event. So instead of getting $10,000 worth of value, you're going to get $15,000 worth of value.
Well,
and again, so I didn't have to cut the price. Nobody loses out, and they feel like, you know what? I even got extra value.
Yeah, and what I like about that is I feel like that concept will be transferable, right? So instead of, when somebody calls in to cancel a gig, it could be, hey, instead of that, what if we, and I gave you some of that content virtually to your whole team. Then we came in live. So then you're not losing out on the gig. To Barry's point, you're deferring the payment, you're starting the work now. To Jay's point, you're building that relationship. And to Anna's point, you're really demonstrating a lot of flexibility. Anna, what would you add?
What I would add too is that there's a way to introduce other products that you have without selling them. And that's by adding them in as bonuses, adding them in as this is extra goods and extra things that we're going to give you. And that's a way when you're, working with a meeting planner who's saying, okay, we're going to delay and you want to give value now, maybe you do have an already in the can virtual opportunity that prior to this, they weren't interested because that's not where their budget was. They weren't looking for an online solution. But if you can make it available, because again, we got time and we got virtual things that don't cost us a penny to offer them too, by bundling it in as Randy did, it makes them even more interested and more valuable. And you are by helping selling by getting that more exposure, but you're doing it with absolutely no icky factor to it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to stay away from the icky factor.
That's a really great point. So Jay, Richard asked the question that, is this really a good time for a speaker to be selling regarding sell your way out, given the current general state of concern and uncertainty among people that's really focused on employment, income, bills, health, etc. Is this like, how do you sell in this environment without being tacky? And I've heard this concern from a couple of different people before this webinar. So Jay, what advice would you have on that?
I don't think of it actually as selling. Obviously we are selling, but what we're really doing is helping more people at once. You know, our goal, as was mentioned earlier, is helping, not selling. And so we've got a great number of clients and a tremendous number of industries who are in as bad, if not worse shape going forward than our own. I mean, one of our clients is Caesar's Palace. You know, not a great week for those folks, right? And I got lots and lots of clients who are affected. Qualcomm is a client, right? They have huge challenges that they're faced with, and they're not even sure what to do about marketing or customer experience, or whether they should be doing marketing right now. So all those clients have a tremendous amount of uncertainty and concern, and so I'm making myself and my strategy team available to assist all of them. So what we're doing is saying, what we want to work with you on is making sure that you succeed in the next 3 to 6 months. And if there's a particular program that we can help you with, fantastic, we can talk about that. But you know, as many people in NSA have heard, there's no need to be nervous when your heart is in service. And I think that's the perspective you got to come at it from, which is, you are here to help. And trust me, if you focus on that, the money part will take care of itself. Now, I know it's hard to believe that when you've got bills to pay and groceries to buy and everything else, but trust me when I tell you, if you can just hang on and you double down on assisting people, the money people will come back in spades.
Excellent. Anna?
That's so good. And one of the things that the president of IASB, Richard Schulp, shared with me is, if we already have an existing relationship with you as a bureau, and we already have something happening, by all means offer to help. But if I've never heard of you before, this is not the right time to reach out to me. So
important distinction.
Exactly.
I've gotten more emails in the last week. I've gotten more emails in the last week from companies I've never heard of.
Exactly.
I've unsubscribed to more emails in the last 48 hours than I did over the entire holiday season, and I didn't think that was mathematically possible.
So yes, but just making sure that right now your outreach is in the context of the times, that you really understand where their heads are, what's happening, and really beginning to think of, what could you be doing for them in 2 months? Where are they going to be in 2 months? Don't reach out to them about it now, but where are they going to be in 2 months that your topic, your expertise can help them? Start thinking there and planning the access or the conversations, but not delivering them right now.
Excellent point. Barry?
I have a client that in January, I did my 145th full fee presentation for a corporate client. Over the 12 years and 1 month that they've been a client, I've done dozens of things for them for free that we never even talk about a fee, to Jay's point and to Anna's point, or to Harvey McKay's point, dig your well before you get thirsty. And so it's been my experience that that's what really works. So what I would advise any NSA member to do right now, see if you don't have 10 opportunities, 10 people you've done some business with, maybe not a lot, that you can just start pouring into their lives right now, so that when we come out of this in 6 months, you'll be top of mind for them, and that'll pay a dividend for years and years to come. So I think that's where we start with it. At the same time, don't be afraid with a current client to step up and talk about adding value to them and not making the fee or the selling process the key. They understand what you're doing. If they've worked you, then they know that opportunity will come. So I think, to Jay's point, if we're serving, we're not selling, but we're actually selling the most effectively when we do that.
Excellent. Randy, I have a two-part question for you. So what do you see as the more immediate business opportunities right now during the crisis? And then what should people be investing in right now?
Okay, great. So allow me to take your two-part question and make it a three-part one. Because let me give you one strategy that I think addresses the question that they just gave Jay about, hey, should we be selling right now? I mean, I get that fear, but I think all three of them answered it that, you got to know the value of what you have. Like I have a client in Norway. I have a program with them in June. Today, I found out the unemployment rate in Norway doubled in the last 24 hours. Literally doubled. And that's what's going to be happening all over the world. So I need to be thinking about how can I help that client in Norway, right? So first thing I'm going to say of the part one of this is everybody in this meeting right now needs to become a public, visible resource in your space for the next 6 months. And then hopefully you're just going to continue it forever. Okay. So what I mean is, for instance, I have 70% of my business is in the direct selling field. So I have websites devoted to that. I have Facebook groups devoted to that, a mailing list devoted to that. So 3 or 4 of my books are in that. So I got public 10 days ago, and I did a live stream and say, hey, let's talk about what you're facing now because of the coronavirus and how you can deal with it. Basically, what we're doing for you guys tonight as speakers, I was doing for the direct selling industry 10 days ago. Then I did another one 7 days ago. Then I did another one 2 days ago. So basically what it is I'm doing a virtual keynote, or not a keynote, a virtual seminar for about 2,000, 2,500 people. And I'm saying, hey, here's what you're facing. Here's what to do if you have e-commerce options. Here's what you can do if you're in a lockdown situation. Here's how, if you're in a quarantine, here's some things you could do to schedule the time. So, and Bob and Susan Nagin, they're in my coaching program. They're in the retail space. So I met with them. We did a thing. He's done 2 or 3 of these. They created a 16-page special report just for retailers, how to handle that. So I'm suggesting everybody in NSA, you need to be looking at what's your industry, what's your space, and you need to be putting yourself out there as the valuable resource and not even trying to monetize it. Knowing that, hey, I'm just going to do this for the next 6 months, knowing that when people are ready, if they're not ready, and first of all, there will be people now who will see you in this space and say, hey, can we bring you in to work with our company? Some of the things we saw on your live stream. And some of them aren't going to be ready for 6 months, and some of them aren't going to be ready for 1 year. But when they are ready, they're going to remember you were the guy or the gal who stepped up when everything was down, and you were the thought leader out there saying, hey, here's what you're going to face. Here's how we're going to get through it. So
Randy, can I jump in on that real quick?
Yeah, please.
At risk of creating a tremendous amount of competition for myself, I've obviously been doing webinars for a long time. I've done hundreds of webinars for clients and sold them and produced them. And so my team and I have a legitimate experience in this category. 3 weeks ago, sort of seeing this snowball picking up speed, I created the article that I put in the chat, and then we started to reach out to clients and planners about our webinar expertise. Actually bought a few ads on Google, etc. In the last week, we've had 6 brand new leads from brand new events and meeting planners saying, we are going to do a virtual summit now. We'd never heard of Jay before, but we see that he does a bunch of webinars. Can he now be in this event? We're actually creating new opportunities that we never would have even pursued in the past. And so I think what I really want to emphasize, and Randy keeps coming back to it, and he's exactly right, is if you're on this call, you have something that people need. it may not be exactly the thing that you've typically given them, but you have something that people need. And all you've got to do is unlock exactly what that is and how to package, price, and offer it. And it can absolutely work for you.
Yeah, and I'm going to put in the chat, I'm going to put the link for that webinar, and just go watch it and then outline what I'm doing there. Okay, he did the intro, then he's talking about what's going to happen. Now he's talking about how to mitigate the financial risks. Then he's talking about what kind of business development, same kind of thing we're doing tonight. And just say, okay, now how do I extrapolate that and do that in my space? And then be a guest on podcasts. There's a newsletter that every week comes out of podcasts that are looking for guests. Write op-eds, be guest blog poster. The Haro Publicity, help a reporter out newsletter. This is the time you're sitting home, you're not getting on planes. There's TV shows, radios, blogs, podcasts, newspapers, magazines, online sites, membership sites. They need your expertise. So get out there. And then I'm going to say 2 qualifications to this. Number 1, don't prescribe and diagnose, right? Be the expert on how to deal with what's happening with the virus. Don't let them draw in on, well, I heard there's a treatment for this and that's working. Or what about, I heard the replication, the doubling rate in Italy is this. And, don't get into that because that's not our area of expertise, right? So don't let them drag you into that. Like, okay, no. Please, cdc.gov, check the information there. I just want to work with you on how to do your business. And then the second qualification, and let me put this in the chat, is don't be tone deaf, right? If particularly you guys, some of you use these auto post services where you queue up your tweets or your Facebook posts for weeks ahead. And it's like, I remember when Kobe died and the helicopter went down and we knew 8 people were dead and all of the, every network and radio was talking about it. And then I look on Twitter and then you have these auto scheduled feeds that say, what a great time to buy timeshare. Yeah, it's like, you just look so toned down. And the same thing, which was related to the question, don't be all salesy of, hey, we're having the coronavirus special because of CV, we're going 60% off. Buy, don't be stupid, right?
Wait, Randy, I need to go delete something over here.
Right? So that's the first big packet is just be out there as a valuable, very public resource helping your tribe, the people in your space, deal with this. Then, you had something to add, Anna?
Yeah, and I was going to say, and if you don't feel right now like you have something to say that would be contextually appropriate, this is the time to go deeper in your expertise. That's what this window of time is. If you're listening to this and saying, I don't know from my space and my expertise what I would say about this, then use the next 2 weeks to research, read those books you've been meaning to read, listen to those things, go deeper on your research, make sure that this is the time that you take your expertise to that place. So again, you're ready when people start coming back out to meet them where they are. So if you're listening to it and saying, I don't know what I would say about that, that's the opportunity.
Yeah, 2 things. So Amy Sagami, just look up from your comment and the link is there. I put the Haro publicity thing. And I didn't put the podcast one, but I'll add that. And then I have the Facebook thing. And yeah, Anna, if somebody is saying, I don't know what to say right now, then how are you charging a fee for what you do? Because how are you working with clients if you don't know how to help your clients in their difficult time? So you too need to reassess. And that tells me you're a ham and egger who's, doing the starfish story and the 4-minute mile story and the I did it and you can do it too.
The starfish webinar is incredible.
You know, people need more than that right now. So if you've been skating by on that stuff, it's time to step up. Jay, Barry, anything you would add to this before I go in the other stuff?
Randy, I want to underscore what you said. Now, this is my opinion, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't believe I will be. I believe our profession is now in the midst of, and over the next 6 to 12 months, changing more than it ever has in the history of our association. If we attempt to stay the same, even people in my age bracket, if we attempt to stay the same, we'll be left behind. We've got to, while we're at the same time reaching out to our clients, doing what you're talking about, Randy and Jay's talked about, we've ourselves got to become even better equipped for the reality that's coming. This is a change that will be the biggest one we've ever experienced, and it can be the most profitable one, but only if we do the work to get there.
And I would add to what you're saying there, Barry, the workplace will not be the same workplace when people do return. And that's a major opportunity for all of us. This disruption has disrupted the way the workplace works. And so all of us are needing to think about, how do we help our clients when they come back, when people come back from their self-isolation, when they come back and realize that whether it's been 2 weeks or a month or more, that what they used to say they could not do, work in this kind of format, work virtually, all of that, all of those different dynamics are going to be up for new questioning. So how does each one of us help our people think about what the reality, the new reality they return to, is something we can help them with?
Yeah, and I put the link in there, but it's got a space which says example of me, and I just put the podcast newsletter one. It says example of me doing a webinar for direct selling. I'm going to post it again right now. So if you're watching on Zoom, it's there right now. If you're watching on Facebook, it's 10 seconds later. So get in the time machine. All right. So now business development / rescue, right? The digital options. Jay really shared his great thoughts on the webinar stuff. Now you got to say, okay, what are the digital options for my products? What kind of digital products, not live streaming, but digital products that I can put up online that I can sell now? What is for instance, I just put a Facebook post again for the direct selling people, and I mailed it out in a newsletter, but it's the kind of thing I could have made it a PDF and sold it, right? I'm not, because right now I just want to be a resource for the people. I don't want to be selling them anything. I just want to, right? But think of that. What is I saw Joel out in California. He did, he's in the venture capital finance markets, and he sent a link to all his people of a show he was being interviewed on. And the topic was how to deal with this current situation. And now he's offering free consultations, stuff like that. That's where you're putting yourself out there. But then he could take that kind of thing, he could make a video of it, and he could turn that into a digital product. He could turn it into an audio product. He could turn it into a video product. He could turn it into a PDF print product. Now, like Jay, I've always offered, not always, but at least for 4 or 5 years, I've offered a live streaming version of my keynotes and seminars just for people who didn't have the budget to bring me in. And I do 50% of the normal fee is the way I price that. But I would ask for those of you guys who do it, is it really featured on your website? Do people know about it? Have you made it sexy? The next thing would be the Convention and Visitor Bureau in your town. Get a hold of them right now. Hey, my name is Becky Sue. I'm right here in Minnesota, and I know you're going to have a lot of chaos in your space right now. So you may have people that are still going ahead with meetings, and they lost their speaker because they can't fly in from Hong Kong. I want you to know I live right here, and I'm an alternative if that comes up. You've got some events, they're probably going to digital. I can help with that. I can help them with the digital presentation. Just put yourself out and let them know that you're a resource in the area. If you haven't figured out by now, you need to broaden out from keynote speeches, if that's all you're doing. And by the way, if your specialty is speaking on cruise ships, you have two choices. You can stick your head in the oven tonight, or you can diversify, because the cruise industry will never come back. Not in 100 years. It will see, it's one of those changes that Anna talked about, that it's just not going to revert back to the way it was, right? Cruises will still be here. Maybe in 100 years from now, they'll come back when people are tired of vacationing on the moon and Mars and they want to go out in the ocean. But it's going to be more, yeah, sea change, Craig. It's going to be more of a boutique thing, and smaller companies, different cruises, but it'll never go back. So you need to look at coaching programs, consulting programs. And then the other thing that a lot of you aren't doing is that Barry does a lot of it, and this is where most of my consulting work is I'm like the executive coach to the CEO or the owner. And that's really the gist of most of my consulting contracts, is I'm giving them like when they need to fire a vice president, I want them to call me to talk about it. When they need to open a new product division, I want them to call me. What I tell my clients is, don't worry about calling me too much. I worry if you don't call me enough, because I want to give them advice in the important stuff. So think about that. And then the other thing I would say is, going back to the creativity and the flexibility, I mentioned what I was doing for my tribal event. I told you I had a $700,000 contract with it's an old client that I've been working with. This was the new contract. We were supposed to sign it last Tuesday. I have incentives based on sales performance of the company that could make an extra $200,000 or $250,000, right? So that's just under $1 million possible, that contract. And on Tuesday morning, when we're supposed to execute that, we were together on Zoom, and he said, I don't know if I'm going to be here next month. Okay, I can't sign any contract because I've lost my supply chain. I have enough inventory for maybe 2 months, but we've heard from the government they're going to close the border probably in a week. That's what the rumors we're hearing. And I don't know if I'll be here. And I said, well, here's what I want to offer to you is let's start the contract just like we planned, but don't sign it. We're going to do a virtual handshake because we can't do a live handshake anyway. So we're just going to have a virtual agreement for this month, because you really need me this month. We've got to fix this situation this month. So let's just work, on a gentleman's agreement, and then we'll evaluate it in a month. And then if I'd have been smart, I would have done like Barry did, and I would have said, hey, just sign the contract and pay me 3 months ago. But I'm not as smart as Barry Banther, so I didn't think of that. But what I did think of was saying, hey, let's just do it because, and for instance, I had his staff out the next day renting a huge warehouse, and we got an extra 3 months worth of inventory across the border before and it did get closed, by the way. The border did get closed in this particular country. It's in Europe. But at least we've got him 4 to 5 months worth of survivability now, right? So just if you be creative like that and you be the resource, I think there's a lot of things. So the third part I want to talk about is what to invest in now, but I'd rather first hear from my colleagues anything, or Mary Lou, if there's questions from the chat that you want to get to.
Well, so Barry, one question that I have for you is great suggestions, Randy. What if you are a speaker and you haven't transitioned you haven't really diversified your portfolio, you haven't added coaching, you haven't added consulting? What could people be doing right now to build up that in the future? Could they build it like today? Probably not, because that's where you get into, to Randy's point, being that thought leader and that expert. So what could they be working on today to position themselves to diversify their portfolio?
Well, it's a great question, and one that we could take a lot of time to lay out. There are a lot of different things, and the presenters, on this program have got programs they can do that with. The first thing I would do is recognize, let's suppose you're a keynoter. You are an expert in whatever you're keynoting in. And my coaching is similar to Randy's in that it's not a coaching program for great personal development. It's a coaching program for, you're going to call me with a question or a problem, and I'm going to help you solve that problem. So if I'm a keynoter on customer service, I believe you're ready positioned to put yourself in the place of being an executive coach on customer service. Mr. President, your vice presidents, your frontline customer service leaders, I'm going to be available. They can call me. Here's the fee for me being available, and I can help them in an instant with an immediate customer service issue with the staff. So you can move to being an expert from your keynoting platform as a coach that's receiving an incoming call where they need help, and don't worry too much about following all the coaching process. With great respect toward the Coaching Federation and the need to get certified. But in this instance, I think you can move from keynoting to doing that kind of coaching immediately. And there's a fine line between that kind of coaching and consulting. And so for me, here's the fine line. Coaching is you're going to call me and we're going to solve a problem. We're going to work on an issue. Consulting is you're going to call me and we're going to together or with your team create a process to prevent that from happening again or to achieve a particular task that we're trying to do or make something happen. So I think every member of NSA who's a professional member, who's got a working business, you are a speaker, you can take that expertise and immediately provide that as a coaching opportunity and a consulting opportunity. Training will be a little bit different, so I'll set that aside. But I think you can reach out and be coaching and consulting in that area right now. And of course, Alan Weiss's great book on $1 Million Consulting, there are great books on coaching. All of those resources can help you get better at it. But nobody woke up this morning and rolled over in bed and said, I need a coach or I need a consultant. They woke up and said, I need help. And you want to position yourself as the helper, the expert that can help.
Yeah, I mean, coaching and consulting is a means to an end. And so often we treat it as the end, like somebody's buying coaching.
That's right.
They're buying only two things: making customers or keeping customers.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
So whatever it is that you coach or consult on has to do one or both of those things. And I'll tell you what, I am a customer service consultant at some level. We typically do enterprise big company things, but if we did more practical, tactical customer service, like my good friend Lori Guest, the one thing I'd be offering 10 minutes ago was all these restaurants that are doing delivery and takeout for the first time in the history of the restaurant, how to differentiate by having the best possible delivery experience in your city. I'd be selling that to every restaurant in my market.
Excellent.
Randy, there is a question as to why you chose August to reschedule your event. And then let's get back to your third point.
Okay, yeah. All I'm doing, what we're in right now, we're at the craps table. We're at the roulette table and we're playing the percentages. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, but what I've seen is the last coronavirus abated some when the weather warmed up. The previous flus that have happened over the last 50 years have abated as the weather warmed up. So I look at my event and say, where do most of the people come from? And most of them come from the Northern Hemisphere. So I figured late July to mid-August was my best sweet spot of not having to move it again. Now, if I was in Sydney, Australia, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you've got to play the weather game the other way because our winter is their summer and vice versa. So if most of your people are in the Southern Hemisphere, then you're looking at different things. So like I have an author apprentice program, and that is a 4-day event they start with, and that's in June, the first week of June. So I'm nervous as hell about that because, if we look at, again, I can't predict it, but what the experts seem to be saying is we're 3 to 5 weeks away from a peak in terms of infections in the United States. And then you're going to need time, a couple of weeks, for it to go down. So June is already making me really nervous, but it's something I had already booked. It's in the books. It is what it is. If I have to move it, I have to move it. But that's why I chose August, is that in the North American, in the North Hemisphere, I think the late summer to early fall is going to be the best window.
Awesome. Anna, what would you add?
I think that right now, the window that Randy just described is really important. I think that we also need to know that we're probably going to get really busy during that window. So when we're planning things, you know, for Randy, that is his revenue source. If any of us were thinking about when we were planning something and our revenue source is still keynotes, we want to make sure we're keeping those windows of time open, because those are going to get really booked up when people come back to it. So just thinking about how we might have been structuring if we in the past had thought about those months as the months that we kind of take a break, we're with our family, just that we need to be thinking about that. That's how our meeting planners, our bureau partners are going to be thinking, is to book those times. So prepare
Getting
yourself.
plenty of family time right now, Anna. Don't need that December vacation. Too much family time for some of us.
Communicate to anybody else that needs to get on board with that. But like how we pace our year, getting ready for that.
Barry, would you add anything else?
No, I think there's just so much that's unknown to us. And I think Randy and Anna's advice has been well taken. We have to have a high tolerance for ambiguity. We have to see how all this plays out, and we have to look for our opportunity. And I think that opportunity is going to be found not from what we see, but what our client sees. We've got to let our client lead us to this, and we've just got to be open to wherever they're leading us, which means we've got to be in consistent communication with them. If we can do that, and I think we'll be positioned to take advantage of the opportunity when it comes.
Awesome. So I want to do a huge shout out and a huge thank you to all of our panelists. I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. Your devotion to our members is amazing. Your willingness to give so generously of your time and your knowledge is just outstanding. And this is how we will weather the storm together. So thank you, Anna. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Jay. Just so everybody knows, this has been recorded, and we will be sharing this link with all of our members. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Hang in
very
there.
much.
Stay safe.
Thanks, everybody. Peace.